Hello again, guys, and welcome to the fourth and final lecture for the workshop about Maroczy bind structure. Now we will start with the system with knight c2, but before that, please confirm me with one word in the chat if you can hear me and see me well, if everything is okay. Okay, perfect. Now let's see. This is the system with knight c2. A popular one, but in my opinion, not very good for white, although it was used by Magnus Carlsen and other strong players, so we shouldn't underestimate it. Black should continue developing knight f6, knight c3, short castle, bishop e2, d6, short castle, and then knight d7. This move was established as the best in this position, and now there are two possible moves for white, which deserves attention. First, knight d5 immediately is simply premature, because you can continue with knight c5, and after f3, even to play the move f5 in this position. So f5 becomes part of our plan, because knight is already not threatening anything here. So you can take with the bishop and attacking the knight. I don't like this knight d5 move. The other move is bishop e3, which is also not very good. Can you guess why, guys? Can you guess what's wrong with bishop e3? Yeah, most of you are correct. We can play bishop c3 immediately, or first start with knight c5, because this move provokes f3, and then we play bishop e6, put the pawn on f6 if it's needed, and you can decide to play with queen a5, to play with b6, rook c8, but in general, it's a very good position already. Knight e5 is coming. So bishop e3 is not the best move. Bishop d2 is how they handle the position, but still after a5, here, there's nothing that white can actually do. He can try to play rook b1 with the idea to prepare knight d5 or b4 at some point, but then after knight c5, f3 again, there's a move f5, which is quite good. f5, if you take, bishop takes f5, and simply you want to take on c2, you want to play knight d4, there are different options. Just knight d4 is a serious threat right now, threatening to win the exchange. Instead of that, he can play bishop e3 after f5, but then you take, and obviously you're even better in this position, because these pawns are kind of weak, especially the one on e4. Would be a big problem in any endgame. So instead of rook b1, rook c1 was another try, but then there's knight c5 again, f3 or b3, let's say f3, and then the move knight b4. And yeah, again, it's not so simple. Knight d3 is kind of a threat. And if some move like b3, there's this tactic: bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, knight a2, attacking the rook and the bishop at the same time. Queen d4 is always met by e5. Not now probably, but in general, queen d4 could be met by e5 all the time, so this is simply winning. What else? Instead of that, knight a3 was played. They want to come with this knight on b5, but I wasn't always a fan of this. I told you yesterday, this knight a3 is a typical idea, but still, knight c5 is coming, knight d5, and then the simplest way is to simplify the position by playing knight d4. a4 was also interesting and other moves, but knight d4 simplifies the position a lot. Bishop h6, bishop g7, and we're in some kind of Maroczy where everything is fine. Here e5, and then knight e6 is coming. Knight can go to d4. This should be fine. Should be fine. The analysis here continue. After knight d5. Take, bishop e6, and the main point is that after taking, or to make it even better, take, rook d8, take, rook c8. Black should be very happy, and white should be a bit worried about keeping everything under control. Yeah, simply nothing. This is about knight c2. It's not something special. It's simply a good position. So then let's move to the other move further, this knight d4, We mentioned it before. Before white manages to put the bishop on e3 to take with the bishop, bishop g7. Sorry, no, knight d4 here, knight d4, take bishop g5. Yeah, I tried this move with white myself. The point is that you in some lines, the pawn on e7 could be vulnerable. This is the idea. In some lines, the pawn on e7 is hanging after knight d5, but at the same time, the bishop on g5 is not doing anything in particular. And after bishop g7, queen d2, bishop e2, a5, you're just playing like in this bishop e3 variation, and the pawn is coming. There's a new way of handling this position. They somehow play queen e3 to protecting the pawn. Okay, after a4, they play queen e3, but then queen a5, c1, bishop e6, and this f4, which is an aggressive idea, can be easily met by rook fc8. After b3, we take, and exchange queens. It's time to exchange queens. There's no mate without queens, and in this position, black has enough counterplay. Black can play rook a3, they have a5 under control. h6 is always an option. I mean, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. And in general, after a5, short castle, for example, a4, you play the same way, probably not queen a3, let's say rook c1, I don't know. Some move, just queen a5, rook fd1, bishop e6, you are threatening rook fc8. If knight d5, here, the queen is protected because the pawn is on a4, it's not on a7, and you can simply take this pawn. Take, bishop e7 or knight e7, doesn't really matter, because after king h8, black has more threats. Let's say taking here, bishop e7, rook e8, and then just take the pawn. There's nothing to worry about in this bishop g5 line. I tried it myself, but I don't think that I will repeat. Just remember, you play bishop g7, short castle, a5, with the idea a4 to play in absolutely similar way like in the other line. What else can we take? Can we say about this position? Bishop e3, castles, queen d2, a5, and here there's a move. Rook c1, which we will discuss. There's move f3, and there's castles and rook d1. After castle, we continue by playing a4. This position we saw yesterday. For example, after f3, a5. We saw that, I think. c1, bishop e6, knight d5. There is this queen takes d2. We saw yesterday this 10 times, so just to make sure that you remember it, yeah. Rook f8, knight d5, and take, bishop b5, rook e5, and bishop c3. This is very, very important line for the evaluation of this variation. Instead of playing this, white can try to play c5. This is the idea of rook fd1. Then bishop e6 comes, and if taking, then a3. This is the point, and everything is hanging. So he needs to waste time for a3. This gives us time for rook c8. And after rook takes d6, we just take, sacrifice, and exchange. The pawn on c3 is hanging with check. I believe we're just fine here. So in general, you have nothing to worry about against c5 as well. Rook c1 here. So here after castle, after castles, a4, there's a move bishop d4, bishop d7, queen e3, bishop c6, and knight d5. And again, we're ready to capture here. I think you already get this position, and to play knight d7 with the idea to put the knight on c5. If b4, we're of course taking. So take, queen b6, exchanging, and the endgame is equal. Even white should be a little bit careful. There was a game, a UNG against Duda, and Duda was simply better here after rook c7. He failed to win the game, but it's already better for black. So I can't see any particular reasons why we shouldn't enter this line. So now let me show you. the game theory here about this position, and probably the most interesting way of playing it. Oops, 1 a5, castle a4, f3, queen a5, and this position. So how to handle it if your opponent didn't play the move knight d5, which we already saw. You want to put the rook on c8, to play knight d7. For example, rook c2, rook fc8. Just to notice that knight d5 is not giving any advantage. Take, bishop d7, and we control the file. King f2, b5. We have full control of the c file, and we are the one who are going to press in this endgame. So rook fc8, rook fc1. We are not taking this pawn because there's knight a4 trick, but we are playing knight d7. Bishop f1, for example, and then rook c6 could be played, threatening to double the rooks on the c file and more or less forcing this knight d5. After, okay, taking first, taking, and c8, we're completely fine. We should have b4 under control. You should try to do it, but it's not so easy. For example, rook b1, knight c5. The move b4 here failed because of this rook e3. In general, after knight c5, what else here? King f2, for example, rook a6. We have the upper hand. We want to play this and this. And b4 now is leading after bishop c3, bishop b4. We are taking full control of the dark squares. We have control of the a file, so black is again better. I think you should have nothing to worry about after this move, short castle here. And I recommend you to check this line, this one. For black, this is the move order. Knight f6, knight c6, sorry, knight c6, knight f6, and d6. Bishop e2 is the only move because after, of course, knight c2 is also possible, but we already saw that. After bishop e3, we can play knight g4. So bishop e2, there's a move f3, we will discuss this later on. But okay, bishop e2, knight d4, take, bishop g7, bishop e3, short castle, queen d2, and then bishop e6, followed by queen a5. Followed by a5 and a4. Okay, we will get back to this. Now, let me show you the game between Jordan Van Forest and Mkhitaryan. This Mkhitaryan game. No, he has a lot of games. Grigor Sebak Mkhitaryan from Brazil, very, very strong player, very good Marozzi player as well. And you can learn from his games. He played here the move a5 and f3. This is the move which Caruana tried. King f2. I told you before, the king is closer to the center, and most important, the bishop is protected. There is a question a5 or bishop e6 first. So usually a5 first, I think here a5. You can also start with bishop e6. I don't think that there is any particular difference. Both moves are possible. Bishop e6 gives you an option to play another line, to play with queen a5, if you want. So let's say rook c1. Here you can play not a5, but queen a5. If you want to play a5, a4 line, it's better to start with a5. After bishop e6, he should play rook c1. Yeah, or f3 or any move, but not castle. Castle is not very good in many, many lines. So, for example, castles, a5. Yeah, there's no move b3 because you simply play a4. And yeah, you can take, but it's nothing. b4 is not advisable always because even after rook c8, it's you have a hard time to protect this pawn. So, in general, if you want to play with queen a5, we'll see probably some games with queen a5 as well. You should start with bishop e6, but otherwise a5 is perfectly playable. f3, a4, and rook c1. Again, there's no need to go for castle, bishop e6, rook b1, queen a5. This stuff are just very good. Another game of Mkhitaryan saw this, and black is fine. this king f2 move, the invention of Fabiano Caruana, it's quite fashionable, but also it's probably not that dangerous. Not that dangerous. Bishop e6, knight d5. If you take with the knight here, you can have some problems in this endgame, because he is the one who is controlling. No, sorry. If you take here with the knight, queen a5, take bishop d7, then rook c7 comes. And here, if you take the queen on d2, there is knight e7, and in this line, you see the king is not on g1, it's on f2, and the king is protecting actually. The king is protecting the bishop on e2. So you're just a pawn down. That's why here you need to take with the bishop, queen a5, rook a5. If e takes d5, you are fine in the same way like in many lines. Knight d7, rook d1, knight c5, rook hd1. And what b5, b4 is always met by some rook e2, rook a3 moves. You can try f5 here, try to push the pawn to f4. And if you provoke f4 or g3, or doesn't matter which one, you play rook a8. Or this would play, and the other here. You know, bishop d5, take, c takes d5, and then e6. This is a nice way to create a counterplay, and it mainly works because if he takes, like usually the takes, we have a threat, immediate two threats. Knight g4, knight d4, he needs to move the king, and yeah, there's no good square available for the king. You need to put to e1 and g1. It's a problem. So the bishop pair doesn't really matter. Yeah. We're first here, and then something like that. And bishop c4 is not actually so serious threat because we can take king f7, king e7, and so on. Probably the bishop pair could create some problems, but we also have our counterplay. He loses the right to castle, so this king will be somewhere in the center. The pawn on b2 is always hanging. Knight is coming to e5 to c5. I believe we're fine. Here. So it's important to remember the move orders here. A4, there's move rook d1, which we discussed before, instead of f3. Now, if you play f3, you can play short castle or rook c1 and this king f2 idea. And bishop e6, take, e6. And you're fine. Bishop d2, bishop b4 was in this game. e5, very nice exchange sacrifice. Here is bishop d6. You can simply play rook d8, bishop e7, rook d7, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6. And yeah, this is good already for, this is already good for black. e5 was right in this game, but the exchange sacrifice was just very strong. And here, I believe, black is perfectly fine. Bishop is coming to c5 on the next move. And Kirkor Mkhitaryan managed to win this game very beautifully. He maneuvered the knight to e6. The knight e6 would give serious advantage. The pawn on b2 on a3. Yeah, it's very bad. You shouldn't forget that you cannot castle. So you have always problems with this king. I believe we're just more than okay. Jordan Van Forest tried to revive this line against the same opponent. After queen f5, he tried rook fd1, rook fc8, and knight b5. And here, take. I don't think that white has any particular advantage. He managed to win that game, but probably not because of the opening. Here, I don't know, bishop d7 looks fine, followed by knight e6, which was played in the game. Knight e6, take. And Jordan managed to win this position, but the position is objectively more or less equal. You can play rook c7, rook c6, and then double the rooks on the c5, put some pressure on this pawn, and it's really hard to create any problems. And f5 is always in the air as well. So, despite the fact that that Kirkor lost that game, I think that it's perfectly playable. In the other game, Kirkor played here. he managed to, sorry. We get the same position as before, but this time knight d4, knight c5, rook d1, bishop d7, g4, 96, take, and d5. And again, black enjoys a good position. Everything was exchanged, and they agreed to a draw. So, guys, don't be afraid of this king f2 move. It looks at first very clever. Fabiano Caruana won a nice game here, but I think that black is simply perfectly fine after king f2. Where is this? After king f2, bishop e6, rook fd1 with the idea knight b5. It's probably better knight d5 is simply nothing because you take with the bishop. And then you play this e6 idea. So remember, e6 idea is very, very important. And black is fine. Just to see here for black, I wanted to show you another game. Yeah, I want to show you what we checked in first. We'll see it in different ways. To show you this position. Here. F5, b3, knight d7, bishop e3, knight c5, rook b1, e6, bishop d1, or any other move. I mean, this is here we saw in the previous lecture a3, rook fc1, rook d1. I will show them again a little bit from a theoretical point of view. I have a lot of examples here. a3 is well met by a4, and after b4, knight b3, queen f6. So your conclusion is black is completely fine in the early knight d4 line. I'm not sure about the move f3, but I think it's fine. It's absolutely playable. I think black is fine almost everywhere. I just didn't like the main line, which is here, not e6, but queen b6. This is a move which I didn't like that much. We'll probably see again here as well. Rook c1, rook fc8, rook c2, and I just think that black is very, very passive here. Although it's playable, I just don't like it that much. There's a question, I mean, that the lines we just look at with a5 and so on. Yes, I think that the a5 should be played, and black is perfectly fine there. Yeah, I can't be 100% sure, but I think it's fine. There is another line which I will show you later. Just to show you this one, because I also want to recommend you this line. This is not, I'm not trying to make an opening repertoire for you. I'm trying to show you different ideas and to leave to you to decide what to choose. For example, this line, I think if your opponent will play this line with f3 and rook b1, the old so-called old theory, you should go for it with black. Just here, not play rook b6, play the move e6. Sorry. It's here. Yeah, play the move e6, and I think this line is also very, very interesting. I didn't find any particular problems here as well. They try to show an advantage for white in two lines, but I will show them right now, and I'm not sure that there is something. First, as I told you, a3 fails to impress because after this queen f6, the knight has no good square to go, so you cannot protect it by the piece. So a3 is not a playable move. Rook fc1 is a move from the other opera, as we said. Bishop e5, and then king h1 is losing move because of queen h4, f4 take. Bishop g1, as we said here, bishop f4 winning an exchange, f5 is computer's choice. So after bishop f1, queen e7, oh sorry, not queen e7 here, but f5 here, take with the rook. I think it's a very good position. Again, we want to play queen f6. f4 looks critical, bishop g7, and e5 here. Just looks quite dynamic, and I prefer these dynamic setups in Marozzi. If black can get some dynamic game, it's great. Knight e2, again, is well met by this, because f4 here, queen h6, using this pin. and bishop g7. On the next move, e5 is coming, and just there's so much potential energy in black's pieces that I prefer to play this position with black. So rook fc1 is a move I didn't like that much. This is a critical position. Once again, there are many games here. Rook fd1 is a move which is established as the main theory. But here, after bishop e5, I cannot see why this is so dangerous. First, there is this move bishop d4. But again, I'm not so impressed with this. Bishop d4, you can just play even queen b6 or queen e7 here. Why this should be so dangerous? They try to say that after queen e3, it's not so easy, but I see the statistic, it's even good. And also, you're just putting the rook on d8. It's not so simple to handle this position for white. I will include some examples. There's a famous game Topalov against Renderman, which Topalov won, but yeah, this doesn't impress me that much, let's say that. And the thing that I like about this variation is that it's very simple to go wrong. It's always good that when it's simple to go wrong. For example, here, a so logical move like bishop f1 is losing on a spot. Queen h4 and resign. There's no g3 because of queen f6. Double attack. There's no h3 because of queen g3. And there's no there's no f4 because of bishop takes c3. So knight b5, typical idea, knight b5. It's also a big mistake here. So if your opponent is not really well prepared in this line and it's already moved 17, okay, probably he knows everything, but also if he is not expecting exactly this line, why not to play knight b5 or bishop f1? It looks so logical, but then queen h4, g3, take, take, take. King f1 is met by the logical knight takes e4. Oh yeah, f takes e4, f5. We saw this 2 times already. This is just game over. And yeah, the move is g3 here, or bishop d4, or queen e1, but queen e7. And then, okay, when I analyze it, I have some analysis here in from a modern chess database, and I look some other games, and I was thinking, okay, what can be so difficult in this position? For example, knight b5, I just play rook f8. What's my problem here? I cannot see it. Bishop g5, f6, bishop e3, even f5 here. Why I should be worried? His king side is weak. He's not attacking anything. I don't know. This really looks good to me. The idea is now probably at some line to play even king h8, rook g8. I don't know. Black won many games here in some similar fashion. And after this, bishop g5 is natural move. But again, f5 here, g takes f5. Also, rook f5 is possible. And there is one game which continue f4, take, take, knight e4, and then queen g7. This pawn is very well protected. If you decide to give your bishop for my knight, I doubt that this will work well for white. And of course, black is in time to start his own counterplay, h5, king h7, or king f7 even, rook g8, h4 is coming. So I really don't know what is the problem here. And this rook fd1, probably this bishop d4, but yeah, there's nothing in my opinion. Maybe some players avoided it, because in many of the lines, when I analyze it with the modern engines, the engine gives something like 0.20, 0.30 for white. But this is a very common case in Marozzi. So you don't have space. The engines like space a lot. And if white plays all the best moves, white probably will be slightly better. So we'll reach some better endgame. We'll manage to defend against everything and play a3, b4, and kick you and be better. But on the other hand, there's so much dynamic potential for black. So even the engine, when you give them some moves, they start liking black's position more and more. and I think it's just perfectly playable. The move which in the database for modern chess was recommended for white was bishop d1, with the idea to play bishop c2, and of course, when the queen is, the second rank is clear, queen h4 is just a waste of time because it will be met by g3. So again, we're playing bishop e5, bishop c2, and also it supports a3 and b4. So we can say that, okay, it's clever. It's clever that he managed to play bishop d1, bishop c2, and so on and so on. But he wastes some time. At the same time, he wastes some time. And then what? We're going to play queen e7, a3, and here I see two possible moves. One is rook f8, which was discussed, and the other is rook f8. So rook f8, rook fd1, and bishop e8. Let's stop a little bit to understand this position. It took me some time to understand the logic behind it. I think it's important evaluation of this system and for understanding what's going on. So white has no other plan than playing a3 and b4. The other plan is to play bishop d4 to exchange these bishops, but as we said, we are not that afraid of this. We will have good control of the dark squares, and still he needs to proceed with a3 and b4. So he is going to do it. We're putting the queen on e7, not on b6 this time, on e7. So we're keeping the king side. We're avoiding any possible pins, and we're making room for the rook to come to c8. This is the point. It's possible to go to d8, but I prefer this rook fc8, rook fd1, and now, why not b4? It looks very logical, because if you play this move after rook fd8, first let's see, rook fd8, white can play b4, and when you take, and if you play knight a4, you could probably play rook a3 first and stuff like that. But if you play knight a4, bishop a4, bishop a4, b5, you are lost here. Because this bishop is out of play, it's very bad piece, and most probably the dark square bishops will be exchanged soon. So there's some line like that, rook b4, here even black lose a piece. So that's why after rook a3, it's complicated, but it's still the analysis shows that white has some slight advantage. That's why here rook needs to go to c8, and if he played the same thing, d4, take, knight a4, take, with the rook on c8, we are attacking the pawn on c4, so he has no time. He has this trick that he can play this move, and we cannot take the pawn because of knight a4, rook c1, and mate. But here we can play bishop e8, and on the next move, we're playing b5. Our bishop is not trapped after b5. So after bishop e8, we're perfectly fine. Now we are attacking the pawn, so it's okay, guys. And rook fd1. Okay, logical, why not? And now we don't have active ideas. So why not to play bishop e8? What he will show? If he moves this, we can play a4. We're also threatening in many lines to play a4 and just put the knight on b3. Even here, I don't know if he play king h1, which is probably a bad move. We can play a4, b4, knight b3, take, and then what? Then we're simply better. There are some tricks to play queen d3, and we play queen c7 attacking the opponent. It starts some race, knight e4, bishop a4, bishop b3, queen takes c4, but it's just a draw at the end. So we have a threat after bishop e8. It's a good, useful move, which is preparing a4. And if he plays b4, then we take, knight a4, and black has good chances here. Good chances, the position is approximately equal, knight a4, bishop a4, bishop a4, rook a4, c5. Most probably white should think already how to make a draw after c5, d takes c5. Let's say black should be out of danger here. So in my opinion, this e6 idea is simply good. I'll show you once again, e6 idea is simply good. Just to to show you, there's this bishop d3, which we discussed yesterday. So instead of f3, bishop d3, a5, b3, knight d7, take, and rook f1, or the other rook on e1, queen b6, bishop c2, or immediately rook e3 in some lines. But according to theory, we're also fine here. There's no mate, but he's playing rook e3 very quickly. Yeah, it was rook a to e1. Not queen d6 here, but to move some move like rook e8. And after rook e3, this direct play, we can play e5. And this is the key defensive method, because something like rook h3 is met by h5, and there is no sacrifice on h5. We're not putting the queen on b6. Okay, I mean, there are many ways, but the theory shows that we have nothing to worry about, even in this position. Even with the queen on b6, knight d5, we should go back, and still it's fine. Still there's nothing wrong. This queen e7, there's no mating attack, and black is fine. So bishop d3, I will provide you with this analysis. It's not so important for us right now. It's a very interesting idea. Grischuk employed it and the other players, but I think that it failed to impress, let's say like that. Queen b6 or even rook e8 is a nice looking move, which after rook e3, e5, and queen c5, it's just good. So what else there is? There is the move rook c1. Here, rook c1, and then we play bishop at c6, queen d3. The idea is to go f4, a5, f4. If b3, then we just go knight d7. We know the drill already. Bishop e3, knight c5 doesn't make any sense. If he exchange, queen b1, okay, I don't like this queen b1. Let's say rook fd1, knight c5, queen d4, e5. Nice move, because queen d6, take, knight e4 is just an equal endgame, very, very close to equality. You can even try to play rook fd8 and try to play for something more than a draw. Take f3, rook d2, f5, and black has a nice initiative position. If you can try your chances. So the move rook c1 doesn't pose any problems. f4, a4, nice and very well timed, very good timing. f4 is good against bishop e6 to play f5, but here is simply not very good, because after this queen a5, queen e3, yeah, after knight d5, you need to know how to exchange. It's with the bishop, and then it's knight d7 as always. This is good for us. Queen e3, knight d7 again, forcing the exchanges. Queen c5 is coming next. So yeah, of course, exchanging just leads to problems for white. So queen e2, knight f6, and e5. I'll just show you this because it's an interesting way of playing f5 and then g5. Very nice. Exchanging the dark square bishop and putting everything on the dark squares. So it's a really good game. Rook a g8 was a nice move. Black is simply better here. Rook c8, take. Black is better. So let's summarize a little bit here, because I'm a bit fast, but I want to show you many things. In this line, if instead of queen d2 or f3 or b3 or everything, your opponent played rook c1, you exchange, you put the bishop on c6, it's very simple, and you play a5. If for some reason you don't like that, there is an alternative, which I didn't know that it exists. Okay, I know this bishop h6 idea, but I didn't know that it's good here. Rook c2 and then e5. This is the idea. Bishop e3, take, knight e8. Okay, I know that this structure is good, but somehow, yeah, queen g5. It allows knight d5, but somehow it looks fine. You can also try it. I mean, rook c1 has a lot of drawbacks. So let's go for the main and the most dangerous line is the move h3 nowadays. This is a modern idea. Let's see, here I analyze it somewhere for white. Just in a second. For example, let's see this game. yeah, here it's time to see it for white. Bishop e2. We discussed this yesterday. H3. Knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, and queen c2. Rook a5, rook a1. And now what to do? I also have a game like that. But after the move knight d7 here is mistake. So okay, I'm not sure if it's mistake, but yeah, it's probably it is. And I will show later the alternative a4 for black, which is gaining more and more popularity. But now let's see several ideas for white. So knight d7. What is the point? Bishop takes g7. King takes g7. Bishop g4. And here there are many moves probably. The main point is that when this knight moves somewhere, knight c5, knight e5, knight f6, doesn't matter where, always there's a pawn push here. So knight c5, push. Knight e5, push. And we are always better. f5 failed to impress because we take h5, bishop e2, and this is simply very, very bad. Okay, it looks that you are making some counterplay, but after knight e4 or bishop e4, you're just much worse. Here, if you bishop e4, this is simply already a winning position for white, probably because okay, we have knight against this bishop, but this bishop is not bad now. There's a weakness here, there's a weakness here, there's a square on d5, on f3, and black has 3 weaknesses against 2. Yeah. Here, white even played very, very aggressive and allowed some checks, but nothing changed. Yeah, for queen c3. White simply resigned. Black simply resigned, sorry, because he needs to exchange probably and take the rook. Oh, sorry. Not to exchange. There's probably some tactics after queen c3. You need to take. Then I can simply take here. Or first take. Sorry, just to see how I win here. It's a little bit. Yeah, there's rook f1 move. There's rook f1 move and exchange and take a rook on g3. Sorry. Okay, guys. So sorry about that. I'm a bit tired. So this is the position with h3, which I quite like for white. I won 2 or 3 games in it, and it's really a problem for black's player nowadays. How to handle this position? Knight d7, and again, take bishop g4. Whatever he tried, he failed. All these positions with the strong knight against this bad bishop f3, queen f2, f4 is coming next. If you take queen e4, then just rook e1, queen d4. It looks terrible, guys. Looks terrible, and white, okay, knight e3 is the easiest because queen f6 is coming next. So we can say that this is very bad. And black tried to look for some alternatives here, but it wasn't so easy to find. Just show you another bad position. Is this one. If you play knight d7 without the move a4 and rook d1, so now if you play bishop g4, it's not the same, because even after knight e5 or knight c5, let's say, there's no move c5, there's no rook on d1. But here, okay, let me ask you just to see if you're careful. You have 20 seconds. What is the best move for white? No, here it's not rook d1. I will slow down a little bit with the move order. In the other games, instead of knight d7, was played a5, rook a d1, knight d7, bishop g7, king g7, and bishop g4. In this game, knight d7 was playing directly. So what could be the difference? Yeah, we take, and play b4. This is extremely bad position for black, extremely hard to handle. It looks like a perfect Marozzi. It's very hard to put pressure on c4 because the bishop is on the wrong side, it's not on e6. It's hard to put pressure on e4 because, again, knight cannot reach c5 square. a5 is bad because of b5, so you need to play b6 in this position, or knight f6. Let's say b6. In my game, my opponent played b6, I remember. And there's some move. he goes here, and then you can go in for f4 and some kingside attack. You have a very pleasant advantage. In this game, this was again Matthew Cornet against Jordan Van Forest, and Van Forest managed to survive even this one. But g4, for example, h4, it's a very unpleasant. g5 is coming, and looks terrible. Looks terrible in the game. Van Forest was worse all the time, but at the end he managed to survive. Okay, let's say that this doesn't matter, just to remember that this is also not working. And now, when we are still on the same page, let me show you what was suggested in modern chess database, and I think that it's probably okay. To be honest, I think it's probably okay. Just, yeah, I'll show later something. Yeah, okay, let's concentrate on this position now. I'll include the PG and some ideas how to play with white against it, but now let's see how to play with black. Yeah, a4. In this position, it's very interesting. a4. What is the idea of this move? Of course, the idea is not to allow this bishop g4 business and to prepare queen a5. Let's say rook e1. I'm playing queen a5 here, and next time I'm going to play knight d7. So it's a strange looking Marozzi with the queen on c2 and with h3. I believe it's very dangerous to allow this. So the move which makes a lot of sense to me is rook f to d. It's c5. c5, queen a5, c takes d6, e takes d6, and here the point is that you need probably to go for a3, something like that, to stop this pawn moving. Most like bishop c4, rook e8. There is some dynamic resources. This is discussed in some games. Rook e1, b5, looking for some counterplay. It's very dynamic position. b4, if bishop f6, rook d6, take. And also here the rook is hanging. This is saving black, bishop e4, and it's obvious that we're fine here. But a3 managed to stabilize everything. Probably bishop d3 here, knight h5, bishop g7, king g7, rook e1, knight f6, f3, and somehow white manages to stabilize the position. I could argue that probably white is a little bit better here, only in this line, but it's definitely not a refutation of this setup. So probably queen b6, take, d5, f4. There's still plenty of play here, plenty of play. So there's nothing to be worried about, absolutely nothing to be worried about with black entering this line. You will have some play, and with white, I still prefer probably this position. First, this a4 is not a very well-known move. Second, I saw a few games where white managed to win here in this lines. So, in my opinion, this is the modern Marozzi with bishop d7. So, if you decide to go for this bishop g7 line, not for knight f6, which I think it's probably stronger, then if your opponent plays for h3, if he plays with queen d2, I told you, I would enter this line. I would enter this line and a5, b3, knight d7, bishop e3, knight c5, and this e6 business. Yeah, e6. But if he plays h3, then take bishop c6, queen c2, a5, and a4. Just play it, and I believe you are fine. Probably both players are fine here. So I like not bishop f3, but this bishop d3 move, and believe that white keep some tiny advantage, but black has a lot of dynamic possibilities, and it's somehow a good game. You're not squeezed like in many Marozzis. Okay, this is about the h3 line. If you play, well, let's say for both cars, I include a lot of games in this h3 line. This is new modern way of handling the position. I told you yesterday, here, 97, just this needs to be avoided. This needs to be avoided at any cost for black. Just it's a bad game. There's a game Firuccia against Vashela Graf. There's a game Cheparinov against Basemomin. A lot of games where black just suffer this ending. Yeah, and here d6 at some point, and the point. I told you almost always these positions are lost. Here, okay, our king is also not so safe, but these positions are very hard. And statistically speaking, I think white won maybe 80% of the positions where this pawn already reached b6 in some kind of end games with only major pieces on the board. Okay, now let's switch to something else. Yeah, let me show you one idea. Let me show you an idea against this setup. Now we're going to see for white some ideas against the setup with b6. Of course, d6 is much more common, but b6 is possible and it's very tricky. So in the first lesson, we saw here that queen d2 is not very good because of this knight d4, e5, take knight d4 trick. But we saw that rook c1 also failed to impress because of this and bishop h6. We saw that f3, e6 is very, very risky in my opinion. For white, d5 is coming soon. So the move knight b5. Yesterday I was a bit skeptical about that, but today I checked it again and I think that it's not so simple. The main point is that after a6, we're playing knight a3. Very often in Sicilian we have such thing. And after d6, because here e6 is no longer a threat. Queen d2, rook f d1, knight c5, f3, rook a c1, knight c2, rook b1 sometimes. So little by little, white has simply easier play because it's hard to get b5. It's not so impressive to get f5 in this position. Let me show you one example. f5 with the knight on c2. I told you that f5 is always an idea, but now take knight d5. It's not think white has a good game. So this knight b5 move is very, very tricky. a6, we're not worried about a6, e6, of course, is met by knight d6. And queen b8, d6 is met by queen d2, rook e8. And at some point, a6 will come and you will play knight e3. In the meantime, you will play rook d1, rook c1, f3, and so on and so on. This looks like hedgehog a little bit. No, Barozzi and hedgehogs are from the same family. And white is better. About queen b8, f3, rook d8, queen d2. And again, it's not so clever to go for this because knight d6, so d6 and knight d5. And this is a game of Adiban, Indian Grandmaster Adiban, a player who I like quite a lot. He has a very nice feeling of dynamic. And he shows it here. He played bishop h6, just show you the idea, bishop h8. Yeah, black wants to preserve the bishop, so knight takes f6, bishop takes f6, and f4. And the rook is hanging, so e5 is coming. Also, in many cases, f5 could come. And also you stop knight d5, knight c3, knight d5 could come. a6 was played, and probably black was waiting for this immediately. But can you tell me the fourth sequence of moves which will give white a big advantage? You can also mention the second move for white. I will wait for a few more minutes. For a few more seconds. All of you saw this e5 move. After a takes, we're taking the bishop, and this the absence of the bishop here cannot be compensated so easy. I mean, it's very hard. But after bishop g7, Adiban took and play e6. Amazing move. After f takes e6, he has knight d4. Take king f7, king g8, king g8, probably bishop g4. So it's better to start with king f7. And then bishop g4, rook e1 is coming, and this pawn is lost. So also taking in f5 at some point. It's just lost position. Instead of this, his opponent play rook d8, and then simply e takes f7. And it appears that after taking, this knight should go to some awful square, like a7, a5, doesn't matter, let's say a5. And then you play f5, and you have a crushing attack for white, or for white. Yeah, that's... queen is coming on d4, on c3, doesn't matter also. You're taking on g6 on the next move, and all black's pieces are here, passively looking how this king alone is trying to survive. So e takes f7, knight d4, knight e6, bishop f3, and this is very, very dominating position, which black just resigned here because a move like that is won by f5. Amazing game by Adiban. I was very impressed with this game when I saw it. So, in my opinion, this b6 line, even though it's very, very tricky, after knight b5, you have some problems still to solve, and knight b5 is the move. Knight b5 is the move to be played. Everything else gives black some attacking possibilities, gives white some possibilities. Yeah. So now let's see another question. Yesterday, was asked about this position. Normal bishop d7 here, and then bishop e2, take bishop c6, and then the move which I didn't see for a long castle. This is new idea. It's a Carlsen's game against Firouzja. Some of this countless blitz matches which they have somewhere. And here I'm not sure what should be played. Probably queen a5 for black. This seems extremely, let's say, strange to me. I didn't see very often that white is making long castle, but it appears to be a trend. And if Carlsen played, that definitely it deserves attention. So, yeah. So the point is that after moves like a6, which is played very often, white's playing g4. But after b5, white's playing h4 or king b1 and doesn't care. I mean, this is kind of strange. B takes c4, h5. White simply doesn't care. Yeah, he is going for some kind of dragon attacks, taking on g6 and so on and so on. Firouzja played a5, king b1, knight d7. Carlsen played h4. He don't mind exchanging the bishops, of course, queen b6, but he don't want to exchange queens. h5, and then g4 comes. Knight f6, take. Very simple, knight d5. Here, okay, you can say good knight against bad bishop. It's not exactly the case because it's not an endgame, and black is in deep trouble. f4, knight f6, f5. Simply brutal force. Take, rook e1, queen c2, e3, bishop e4, h5, rook f2. Black managed to get the position at some point, but he lost it at the end. The point is that this idea here, it's really strong, and Carlsen misplayed. He could have played h5 immediately, and this leads just to resignation because then there is this nice motive, take and rook g4. So the attack was successful, just Carlsen didn't bring it home. But this long castle, it's an interesting idea. It's another thing which you can try with white if you want. In my opinion, black needs to be very careful here. I don't believe that this will last a lot at the top level because it seems just too risky to me. And probably they will find something. I think queen a5 is the best move and so on, but yeah, for now, this stands okay. White's play is very simple. Here, maybe one, and you don't care. Yeah, it's hard to find the plan. Because I include this game quite late, I also taught a little bit how to play. And yeah, it's really hard to find the plan. In my opinion, Queen A5 should be the move, from what I saw very quickly. Yeah, but I don't know. Queen A5, okay, C8. The computer is quite skeptical about my my ideas. Here C8 somehow try to play against with this B5, but yeah. The other thing is that after F3, probably you can enter some other line after F3 because this is it's possible also with the bishop E2 move order, yeah, so it's not but yeah, if this, let's say how we reach this position, Queen D2, bishop D7, yeah. If this move order, then it's possible not to play bishop D7, but to play knight takes D4. Bishop D4, this is a line which we did not check. Bishop D4, and then bishop E6. Bishop E2, rook C1, doesn't matter, and then Queen A5, rook C1, rook FC8, B3, A6, and so on. This is, yesterday we saw some example here. Okay, bishop E3. Yeah, here bishop E3 needs to be, if bishop E3 needs to be played, then we're more than fine. Yeah, so here rook C1, rook FC8, B3, A6, bishop E3, B5. Forgot what's going on here. Yeah, knight D5. I'm going to see something similar right now. Queen D2, King D2. Yeah, we're going to see something. I think we already saw some endgames. But what is the point? That if you play this immediately, let's imagine that I play without this F3 move. And let's just go to Marozzi. Sorry, it's not this move order, I know, but we reach this position. So it's without playing. Okay, I can switch to just a normal Marozzi to show you what is the difference. Just to see one normal move order. Where is it? Okay, this is the normal move order to show you the ideas. So here, if you decide not to play with here, if you play F3, I told you there's an option to take and to play bishop E6. Play Queen D2. Here probably this is the best move order because now knight D4, it's not very good. I will show you why. But yeah, it's still possible to go for this line. But what is the difference? The difference is that, let's say, if the pawn is on F3, like in Carlsen's game and the others, with the idea Queen D2 and long castle, you can take and play this bishop E6 with the idea Queen A5, rook FC8, A6, and B5, which is probably fine. But if he castle, let's say, and now you take, bishop takes, and now you play bishop E6, now no one is going to play the move B3, F3, and so on. F4 is the strongest move. Queen A5 and F5. And this variation, in my opinion, stands quite well. F5, bishop D7. I even don't remember exactly the theory, but it was here. If here is A3 followed by B4, something like that. The other move was to not to play F5 here. After Queen A5, to play Queen D3, Rook AC8, or the other Rook C8, and then to play B3, and to continue, let's say, Rook FC8. Then we still play B3, and this A6 failed to impress because after you can play F5 immediately, or you can even allow him to play B5. Then take, and now play. for now, just take on b5. There were some games like that. So the plan with f4, this is what I mean. If your bishop is still on c8, hope that you understand the difference. If your opponent plays f3, now you can take and play bishop e6 and have nothing to worry about. But if your opponent plays with short castle already or with queen d2, doesn't matter, then it's not very good to play to take and to play bishop e6 because you there's this f4 idea. Okay, it's a bit complicated. I hope that you understand it. And now let's see here another try for white here. 94, 96. Here, take b6, bishop e3, f3. Queen d2, bishop e6. Rook c1, a5, b3, 97. Bishop e2, 95, short castle. So in many lines, the bishop stays on c6. In this, we have the same position with the bishop on c6. But this one, with the bishop on e6, this is good, in my opinion, for black, because you can play it with b6, rook c8, same thing, b1 and queen d8, queen f8, and yeah, I think it's okay. It's okay for black. This bishop is a little bit more active. It's stopping, yes, but again, it's a passive position. Here we have this plan to play h5, king h7, and bishop h6. If it's going to work or not, I'm not so sure. I like it for black, but it's very passive. So this is something which you can avoid. And there's this possibility to play the move f3 here. The bishop e6, queen d2, c1, and knight d5. Sorry, it's just another game that I want to show. Ah, yeah, this is a very, very important line. Sorry, guys. This is a very important line. If you already play with f3, but still the bishop is on 2, rook c1, bishop e6, there's 95. And then this move is not very good, because after king d5, take. Here taking as we speak is not very good because of this rook c7 move. And taking with the bishop leads to an endgame which we saw after g3, taking, or after rook c8 simply bishop d3, bishop e2. This is what we saw yesterday. This typical endgame leads to an advantage. So instead of that, black should be brave enough to take the pawn on it. And after 97, king h8, bishop d4 to play this position. So here the best move is probably knight g8. Because here black can be in some troubles. Queen d5, bishop c4 gives white a good initiative, in my opinion. Knight d5, bishop c4 is losing. So if you play some random moves, bishop e2, take, knight d7, take queen c3. Okay, here black is also fine. Instead of queen c3, probably bishop e5 is good. Of course, first time when you have an option to take, it's the right time. Queen c3, take, and white is slightly better. So, in my opinion, in this line, queen a5, rook c1, bishop e6, an early d5 is an early knight d5 should be met by queen a2, but it's also an interesting possibility. If your bishop is still here, you're not wasting time to play bishop e2. If you play f3 simply, then this is interesting possibility because queen d2 is simply a mistake, and queen takes a2 is the best move, but it's quite risky. So, guys, this is what I actually wanted to show you. There are many other lines, but it's everything is a little bit complicated, and it needs to lay down a little bit. Probably one line which I missed is this one. which we saw yesterday, knight g4. But here white is simply better. I cannot recommend this. Bishop d4 is simply better. Here you take and play queen d1. Oh, take and play long castle, even it's possible. Yeah, it's but taking here queen d1, e5. There is the simplest way is to play bishop d3, followed by short castle, followed by knight e2, and at some point to exchange with d4. And you will be better. What else? Yeah, if knight d4, queen d1, knight e6. You need to remember the sequence of moves: queen d2, this, and then rook c1. So to avoid bishop c3, followed by queen a2, it's simply very, very risky. Usually black plays something like that. You goes for f3, bishop e2, short castle, rook f2, bishop f1. You're slightly better in this one too. It's very passive for black, but okay, it's playable, we can say. What other Marozzi? What other move orders? Let me repeat my recommendation and we can finish with few exercises. So I recommend you to play two lines. This is the first one. Let's see, knight c6, c4, bishop g7, bishop e3, knight f6, d6, bishop e2, short castle. Short castle. Let's see the classical way. I recommend you to play bishop d7 and against the most popular plan d7, here a5, b3, at c5, rook a, b1, bishop to play e6. This is my recommendation. I think it's a playable line with a lot of chances for black. If he chooses to play with h3, which I also recommend you this, I can also recommend you this for white. The only position where I think black has some chances is after a5, a1, to play the move a4. There are not so many games, probably 30 games in this line only. But the move 97, which you face in 90% of the time, simply, okay, loses is a very strong word, but it leads to a big problems. So I recommend you this line for white. After a4, both sides have chances. So you can try this for both colors. The idea is queen a5, and again, of course, knight d7. The other line which I recommend you is to go here, which is the trend nowadays, is not to go with this, but to go with knight c6, c4, to play knight f6, and after knight c3 to play d6, after bishop e2 to take. So after queen d4 to here, bishop e3, short castle, and okay, this is bishop e6 or a5, the different lines, queen d2, a5 or bishop e6. I personally prefer a5, but bishop e6 followed by queen a5 is also quite popular nowadays. I personally prefer a5 because it creates some problems. Rook c1, b3, b3 is not possible. Rook c1, bishop e6. Also a4 here. A bit tired already. Yeah. a4 here. f3 or short castle. You play bishop e6 followed by queen a5, and the line stands very well theoretically. I cannot see any particular problems. So of course, it's interesting, but probably I had bad experience with it, and that's why I like it. I played in one tournament, and my opponent plays something like that. I quickly become worse with white, and then he offers a draw. But yeah, I quite like it. There's a question about the line with bishop d7, no, about the line with h3. Here, instead of rook d1, can you play b3? You can, but then knight d7 is just a very good move, because take, and after bishop g4, I'm in time to put the knight somewhere on e5 or c5, and you don't have e5, which is the main idea. So black needs to play something like that, and then I'm going queen b6, and I'm more than happy here. Rook f c8 is coming, or queen b4 and a4. So Yeah. Okay, guys, let's finish with few exercises. Or if you have, we still have 5 minutes until the end of the lecture. So if you have any questions about the move orders, the theory, or anything, James said that he has to go, and thanks me for the nice course. Thank you, James. Have a nice evening, and yeah, I hope that it was interesting for you, guys. If you have any questions about the theory, thank you, James, for attending once again. If you don't have, I will continue for a few more minutes with some tests. Great. So everything is clear. Let's solve. Yeah. Test. Here. So this one. Okay. Let's see. Black to move. Typical idea. Very nice tactic. Okay, let me make it easier for you. A4, B4. Now what to do? Thank you, Frederick. Frederick said that he finds those lessons interesting. Got a lot of new ideas. One more new idea for your arsenal: knight b3 check. This is the game of Judith Polgar against Antunes in 1996. Absolute classic. And here a3, a2, a1. The position is still about equal, but Polgar lost. White has enough compensation, but Polgar lost. And okay, here I think we saw this, but it's so complicated that let's repeat it once again. So like this. How to win here, guys? Of course, Queen h4. Always when g3 looks suspicious to you, you should go for Queen h4. G3 and take. And here, from my experience, almost always the tactics work. King f1, take, Queen d3. We're still a piece down, so we need to be careful. f5. So here some knight d4 move. Knight d6 was probably better, but after rook a d8, we're knight d4. f4, nice idea. Knight takes c6, f takes c3, threatening mate. So he needs to take. Rook f4, brilliant. With the idea rook h4. Knight d4 back. If queen g1, then rook f3 simply wins. B takes c6, and we have mating attack and many pawns for the exchange. But it's very beautiful. Knight d4, rook h4, queen g1, still rook h1, and when he takes, we get mate. This is one of the reasons why I like this line. Okay, this one is very similar. Let me show you. Ask me the question in a different way. So king h1, knight e4, okay. Can you find the winning move? It's really nice. Because if you go queen h1 and then queen h2, somehow I will try to play king e1 and escape. No correct answer so far. Come on, let's finish with that. Great. So bishop e4. Great, Tom. Bishop e4. The point is that way, if you take, there is queen h1 check and knight e4. And you need to give up the queen. And have a lot of material for this 3 pieces. Queen for 3 pieces is fine, but I have 4 pawns. And if queen d2, there's e5. Knight moves, there's f5. I take g4, and this is lost for many reasons. First, I have 4 pawns for the piece, and also the attack is unstoppable. The rook of d1 is can everything. Okay, guys, I think it's enough for Barozzi. If you have any questions in particular, now we can start a Q&A session. It was a long day for you as well. If you have questions about Barozzi, about modern chess, about anything, I can answer them. Thank you once again for attending the camp. It's always a pleasure. You were very active. I hope that you liked the lectures. It wasn't so easy to select the material, and it will be a big problem what to include in the PGN. It would be a lot. Yeah, Barozzi, I also quite like it for black after these lectures. I think it's very simple. This is the best thing about Barozzi, that it's very simple for black. Like, I mean, it's probably, objectively speaking, it's worse than Najdorf, but it's 20 times simpler. And you can really play it without knowing the theory, just by some ideas here and there. I will try to make a good PGM for you, but it will take some time, probably 2 weeks. Guys, you can ask your questions in Q&A or in the chat. If you don't have any questions, we can end the session now. Okay, there's a question about the move order in Sicilian. Let's see. Would you go with G6 or with Knight C6? So Christian asked about this position. Probably Knight C6 is the big drawback of Knight C6 is, of course, this Bishop B5. That it allows Bishop B5, and this is this move is very popular, even sometimes more popular than D4. And if you play G6, you avoid. That's the problem with G6 is first that it allows D4 takes and Queen D4, which I'm not sure that I like this position. It requires some to know some theory here. Probably it's fine, but the bigger problem is that it allows C3. And now what to do? Yeah, D5, and to play this this line after it takes D5. E5 is also a possible move, by the way, here. E5 also it takes D5, D4, but E5, I don't know, it seems to me that always that white is slightly better in these lines. So Bishop G7, D4, takes D5. Although I personally prefer Knight C6 because Bishop B5 is not so, it gives you a lot of chances. You can check a Rook's database about E5, it's quite interesting. I recently played it also. But of course, G6, E6, everything is playable. Can white force a Marozzi? Christian, I'm not sure really about this, about the move order, but for me personally, I would play Knight C6. But if you're comfortable with all this with G6 and C3 and D4, Queen D4, it's possible. There's a question if it's possible to force a Marozzi. No, unfortunately, it's not. Against Arnaudov, yeah, F3, and now if Knight C6 or A6 or everything to play C4, this would be perfect. But unfortunately, here there's a move E5. I think this was the strongest, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think it was E5. Also Knight 6, but okay, E5. And after Knight B3, you can still go for this line. There's nothing wrong, but there's D5, I think, which is slightly better for white. Still not clear, but also there's Bishop E6, C4, A5. You're forcing some kind of, okay, it's not exactly Marozzi because the bishop is not on G7, but black has very good counterplay. This pawn start running. Yeah, you can check this line. If you want, you can check this line with F3. I'm not sure how good is it, but many players will play against you here, something like Knight C6, and after C4 will be fine. There's still Queen B6 here, some moves like that, but you're in some kind of Marozzi. And this was tried in a very high level, I think F3 was tried, but it's definitely you're not forcing black to enter the normal Marozzi.